Pay attention, because almost everything you think you know about your own head is wrong. I'm your trusty monkey, and today I'm here to demolish 40 lies about the brain and the mind. That you only use half your brain, that your heart feels emotions, that you remember being a baby, that genius is born and not made. None of that is the way you were told, and it's not your fault. We were all taught the same lies. These are 40 darts aimed at the most stubborn myths stuck in your head. Stay until the end, hit subscribe, tap the bell, and get ready, because your own brain has been lying to you for years, and today we're ruining its show. Seems obvious, right? You open your eyes and there's the world. Wrong. You see, with your brain, your eyes are just two cameras sending raw data. The image that hits your retina is upside down, flipped and flat on top of that. Your brain grabs it, flips it right side up, calculates the depth, and builds the movie you actually experience. About 1 million fibers per eye travel through the optic nerve, but that's just raw material. What you see is a construction built in the visual cortex. All the way in the back, at the base of your skull, the boss of your vision sits so far back that a person can have perfect eyes and still go blind from a blow to the back of the head. It's called cortical blindness, and it's a real condition. That's why dreams or hallucinations show up with your eyes closed, without a single ray of light getting in. Your eyes just gather the light. The one building the scene is the boss on the inside. Lots of people swear they remember their crib, their first birthday, crawling around as a baby. Mostly wrong. It's called infantile amnesia, and it's universal. It happens to all of humanity equally. Practically nobody has real memories from before age 3 or 4, because the hippocampus, the region that builds lasting memories, is still only half built at that age. So what about those scenes you swear you remember? They're reconstructions. You built them later, out of photos you've seen 1,000 times and stories your mom told you. Your brain stitched them together so well that they feel like your own. In studies, researchers planted false childhood memories in people, like getting lost in a mall, and a good chunk of them adopted those memories as real, even adding their own invented details on top. Those mental home videos of you as a baby aren't a stored file. The more sure a person sounds about their crib memory, the more likely it is to be manufactured. They're a home movie that you directed yourself years later. You put your hand on your chest, feel it racing, and say, "I feel it right here." False. Emotions get cooked up higher in the brain. Regions like the amygdala and the insula build fear, anger, or love. And only after that do they send the order down to the body. The racing heart, the sweaty hands, the knotted stomach, all of that is a consequence, not a cause. The proof lies in people with damage to those brain regions who lose the ability to feel certain emotions even though their heart works perfectly. And the opposite happens too. With electrical stimulation to the right spot in the brain, you can trigger laughter or anguish without anything happening in the chest at all. The heart obeys. It doesn't decide. They wrote the poem about the wrong organ. The heart is the loudspeaker, not the composer. The one that makes you fall in love and the one that scares you is the one up top. That hunch that never fails. The gut feeling. The magical intuition that seems to predict the future. Wrong. There's no evidence at all of any mystical power. What you call intuition is your brain running lightning-fast calculations under the radar, recognizing patterns you've already lived through without you even noticing. A firefighter who senses a building is about to collapse isn't guessing. He read 100 signals that his brain processed in a single second. Serious experiments on extrasensory perception, the ones with the little room, the headphones, and the white noise, never produced results above random chance when they were done properly and with controls. And remember something, you don't remember the hunches that failed, only the one that hit sticks in your mind. It's not a secret power, it's experience dressed up as magic. People who claim to be able to predict things usually fail just as often as anyone else. They just don't keep count. It's your accumulated experience whispering to you, not some force from beyond. Your sixth sense is really just the other 5 working overtime. In the movies, if someone saw it with their own eyes, case closed, Dangerously false. Memory isn't an accurate recording, it's clay. It gets reshaped with every question you're asked, every photo you're shown, and everything you read afterward. Researcher Elizabeth Loftus showed that just by changing a single word in a question, people remember broken glass that never existed. Swap bumped for smashed, and suddenly the witness swears there was glass everywhere. And here's the chilling part. According to the Innocence Project, around 70% of wrongful convictions later overturned by DNA evidence in the United States involved a mistaken eyewitness. 70%. People who paid with years of their lives for a badly assembled memory. Seeing something doesn't guarantee you'll remember it correctly. And every time you recall something, you record it again slightly changed. Like photocopying a photocopy. Your memory doesn't fill, it rewrites. That gave me a dopamine hit. So happy. Mostly wrong. Dopamine isn't the chemical of happiness. It's the chemical of wanting. It doesn't make you enjoy things. It makes you crave them. It's the one that pushes you to chase the reward. The one that tells you, come on, keep going, you're almost there. The real pleasure, the actual enjoyment once you have the thing, is handled more by other substances like your body's internal opioids. Scientists split this into wanting and liking, and they proved these aren't the same thing by triggering separate circuits in rats. That's why you can crave something like crazy and then barely enjoy it once you get it. And that's why a compulsive habit keeps you searching without ever really savoring anything. Dopamine isn't the applause at the end. That's why the anticipation often excites you more than the actual prize. It's the carrot dangling in front of you to keep you walking. That super strange feeling of, I've already lived this, which a lot of people take as a past life or a premonition. Wrong. As far as science is concerned, deja vu is a small, harmless glitch in your brain. The region that handles the feeling of familiarity fires a split second too early or too strongly, and it tags something you're actually experiencing for the first time as already known. It's like an alarm going off on its own with no burglar in sight. Interesting fact, it's more common in young people than in older ones, and it shows up more when you're tired or stressed. It's thought to happen precisely because your memory is working well and running an internal check that occasionally crosses its wires. It's not a memory from another life. It's a short circuit in a perfectly healthy brain. It's so common that most people experience it at some point, and nothing bad happens to them, just a mental hiccup. Nothing more. You look at something and think you're seeing it in real time, live and direct. Not quite. Everything you perceive has already happened. Light takes time to arrive, the signal takes time to travel through your nerves, and your brain takes time to process it and build the image. All told, there's a delay of around 80 to 100 milliseconds between what actually happens and what you see. That sounds tiny, but at the speed of a tennis ball, it's a huge gap. So that you don't live constantly behind schedule, your brain does something incredible. It predicts. It guesses where the ball is going to be an instant later and shows it to you already there, ahead of time. That's how you're able to block a shot, dodge something, or catch a thing on the fly. You literally live in a present that has already happened. The world reaches you with a delay, and your brain covers it up so well that you never even notice. You picture a genius with smoke coming out of their head, neurons firing at 1,000 miles an hour. The whole brain lit up like a Christmas tree. It's the opposite. Imaging studies show something genuinely surprising. When someone very intelligent solves a problem, their brain often lights up less than an average person's brain, not more. It's called the neural efficiency hypothesis. A trained brain finds the shortcut, spends less energy, and goes straight to the point without wasting time. In experiments where people learned to play Tetris, as they got better, their brain activity went down, not up. A brilliant mind's brain isn't a factory running at full blast throwing off sparks. It's a finely tuned engine that does more with less fuel. Being smart isn't about forcing the machine. A beginner lights up half their brain for something an expert solves using just a small corner of theirs. Being smart is having a machine that doesn't need to be forced. That cousin who interprets dreams, the little book that says, dreaming about water means this. Wrong. There's no universal dream dictionary with any scientific backing. And dreams don't predict the future either. Freud built his theory of symbols more than 100 years ago, but it was never seriously proven. What we do know is that dreaming serves a real function. While you sleep, your brain replays and sorts through what you experienced, processes strong emotions, and locks in what you've learned. That's why you dream more about what's worrying you, and why sometimes you solve something in your sleep that wouldn't come to you while awake. The exact same dream means something different to two different people, precisely because it comes out of each person's own head. It's not a coded telegram from beyond. It's your head doing the day's cleanup and filing. Dreaming that your teeth are falling out isn't announcing anything. It's announcing that you slept. You were sold the idea that once you're an adult, your brain is fixed, wired for good, impossible to change. False. And it's beautiful that it's false. It's called neuroplasticity, and it's the brain's ability to rewire itself for your entire life. The most famous case is London's taxi drivers. A study from the year 2000 scanned their brains and found that from memorizing thousands of the city's streets for one of the hardest exams in the world, they had a part of the hippocampus that was larger than in the rest of the population. It grew from being used so much, just like a muscle. And the more years they'd spent driving a taxi, the bigger it was. After a stroke, other healthy regions can even learn to take over the work of the damaged part. Your brain isn't wet cement that dries and sets. Learning a language or an instrument as an adult leaves a physical mark on the brain, no matter your age. It's never too late to rewire. It's clay you can keep shaping well into your 80s. You smash your finger with a hammer and swear the pain is right there, in the finger. Only half true. The signal does come from the finger, yes, but pain as an experience is manufactured by the brain. Without a brain to interpret it, there's no pain of any kind. The most striking proof is phantom limb pain. People who have lost an arm still feel pain in a hand that no longer exists because the map of that arm is still drawn inside the brain and keeps sending out signals. Neurologist Ramachandran managed to calm that impossible pain using a simple mirror that tricked the brain into believing the hand was there again. Pain doesn't live in the wound. It lives in your head, which decides how much something hurts depending on the context. An athlete injured in the middle of a game sometimes doesn't even feel it until the moment passes. That's why the exact same blow hurts differently depending on the day, your fear level, and even the mood you're in. A minute is a minute. Time passes the same for everyone. That's what the clock says. False. At least as far as your brain is concerned. Time is elastic depending on how your head experiences it. When you're having fun, it flies by without you noticing. When you're bored, it stretches out forever. And in a moment of danger, it seems to go into slow motion because your brain records way more detail per second, like a camera filming at a higher frame rate. And there's a mystery every single one of us has felt firsthand. Why did a single summer as a kid feel like an eternity, while now as an adult, the whole year flies right by? One explanation is that as a kid, everything was new, and your brain records new experiences as dense, detailed, and long. As an adult, you do almost everything on autopilot, and routine compresses down into nothing. Want time to last longer? Fill it with new things. Pack in adventures, trips, and firsts, and suddenly the year stretches back out again. The clock inside your head isn't run by the clock on the wall. You've heard it 1,000 times. That memory is your hard drive, that ideas are files, that you sleep to reset. False? The brain is nothing like a computer. It has no RAM, no folder-like place where data gets stored, and it doesn't process one thing at a time. You've got around 86 billion neurons all working together, in parallel, using a mix of chemical and electrical signals, something no machine does in quite the same way. And here's the thing, each neuron can connect to thousands of others, so the number of possible connections outnumbers the stars in the galaxy. Check this out. Every era has compared the brain to its best technology. In ancient times, people said it was like a system of pipes carrying fluid. Later, they compared it to a clock, then to a telephone switchboard, now to a computer. None of those metaphors really fit because no machine builds itself while it's running. 50 years from now, people are going to laugh at us just the same. It isn't a computer made of meat. It's something else entirely, and we haven't even finished figuring out what. I studied so much I lost 4 pounds. Nice try, but false. It's true that the brain is a glutton. It makes up barely 2% of your body weight and eats up around 20% of your daily energy, somewhere around 300 to 400 calories. But here's the catch. That expense stays pretty much fixed, whether you're pondering quantum physics or zoning out at a wall half asleep. Concentrating as hard as you possibly can only adds a tiny bit more, just a handful of extra calories, nowhere near a full meal. A chess player at a world championship might burn a bit more, but that's from the stress, the racing pulse, and barely eating, not from thinking hard. If you want to lose weight, move your body. The mental exhaustion after studying is real, but it's fatigue, not extra calories burned. Thinking wears out your head, it doesn't shrink your belly. The classic method. You read, you reread, and you read your notes again until it finally sinks in. False. And it's actually one of the worst methods out there. When you reread something, everything sounds familiar, and your brain tricks you into feeling like you already know it. But recognizing isn't the same as recalling. They're two completely different things. A classic experiment from 2006 compared two groups, one that reread a text and another that tested themselves by trying to recall it, with the book closed. The ones who quizzed themselves remembered far more days later, even though in the moment they had a harder time and felt less confident. It's called the retrieval effect, or testing effect. Close your notes and explain it out loud to yourself. Studying isn't running your eyes over the same line again. It's harder and it's frustrating. But that exact discomfort is what locks the information in. It's forcing your memory to pull the information out on its own. No help? The famous IQ number. Score high and you're a genius. Score low and you're a bit slow. Incomplete. The test measures a handful of specific skills like logic, patterns, and vocabulary, but it leaves out a ton. It doesn't measure creativity, emotional intelligence, street smarts for handling real life, or persistence, which often matters more than the number itself. And here's something that'll blow your mind. It's called the Flynn effect. Over the course of the 1900s, the population's average IQ rose by about 3 points per decade, generation after generation. In other words, your grandfather would score really low by today's standard. And he wasn't dumb at all. Did humanity suddenly get smarter? No. What changed is the kind of thinking the world trains you to do. That number isn't a label branded onto your forehead. It even depends on how well you slept, whether you had breakfast, and how nervous you were that morning. It's a partial snapshot, taken on one single day, of a tiny part of who you are. Hang on, because in myth number 18, you're going to find out that something you do every single time you study or read helps you a lot less than you think, and you've been doing it wrong since elementary school. Here's the one I promised you. The neon highlighter, the ruler, leaving the whole book painted yellow and pink. You think that's how you learn? False. A major review of study techniques from 2013 ranked highlighting among the least effective strategies out of everything they analyzed. Why? Because it's passive. You mark the sentence, you feel like you did something productive, but your head barely worked at all. On top of that, you tend to overdo it. And when everything is highlighted, nothing is highlighted. You lose the important stuff in a sea of color. It works far better to quiz yourself. Cover the page, explain it in your own words, or spread your studying out over several days. That little book full of colors gave you the illusion that you studied. If you still like highlighting, highlight a little, and choose very carefully, not the whole page. A highlighter paints the paper, it doesn't paint your memory. You feel like everything in front of you is in focus and crystal clear all at once. Completely false. Only a tiny zone at the center of your vision, about the size of your thumbnail held at arm's length, actually sees with real sharpness. Everything else is blurry and almost colorless, even though you never notice it. Try focusing one eye on a single word in this sentence and you'll notice the words right next to it already go fuzzy. Your eyes make lightning-fast jumps, hundreds of them per minute, painting the scene piece by piece. On top of that, each eye has a blind spot, a tiny hole where the optic nerve exits and you can't see anything there, but your brain fills it in with the surrounding scenery so you never even know. Your perfect vision is an editing trick. You see one sharp little piece and your brain sells you the whole movie as if it were entirely in focus. I remember every detail of that intense day like it was a photograph. False, hard as that is to believe, those vivid memories of historic or dramatic moments, the ones that feel burned into your memory forever, are called flashbulb memories. And here's the catch. They feel incredibly sharp and you're absolutely certain of every detail. Yet they're just as flawed and fragile as any ordinary memory. One researcher recorded students' accounts of where they were when a famous tragedy struck right after it happened and asked them the same question again years later. Many gave a completely different version, and when they were shown their own original response in their own handwriting, they didn't recognize it and even argued about it. Confidence doesn't guarantee accuracy. Just because a memory shines doesn't mean it's faithful. Your brain sells you a high-definition photo that, underneath, is half made up. A man's brain and a woman's brain, two planets that just can't understand each other. Way overblown. Average differences do exist and they're tiny, but the overlap between the two is enormous. A large study from 2015 scanned more than 1,000 brains looking for a pure male brain and a pure female brain, and never found either one anywhere. Almost every brain is a mosaic, a mix of traits that tend to be more common in one sex or the other, but blended together inside every single head. There's no pink mold and blue mold coming straight off an assembly line. If you're handed a single brain with no label telling you whose it is, you can't reliably guess whether it belongs to a man or a woman. And a lot of the supposed differences come more from how we were raised than from biology. They're not two planets. There's more variation between any two random men than between the average man and the average woman. It's the same neighborhood with similar houses and the occasional different detail. Humans have a terrible sense of smell. Dogs blow us out of the water. Half true and with a shady history. The idea that we're basically noseblind comes from an anatomist in the 1800s who threw the claim out there with almost no evidence. And it stuck around in textbooks for 200 years. Modern science tells a different story. A 2014 study estimated that humans can distinguish an enormous number of smells, way more than previously believed. A massive number. In some tests, after training, people followed a scent trail through the grass on all fours like bloodhounds and got better with practice. We don't compete with the dogs at detecting scent from a distance, but for plenty of smells we're on par with them. Or even better, your nose isn't just decoration. In fact, smell is the sense most closely tied to memory and emotion, which is why a perfume can suddenly transport you straight back to childhood. It's a radar you've underestimated your entire life. You see one of those images where two identical lines look different and you say, "That's crazy, my eyes tricked me." It's actually the opposite. Your eyes don't trick you, your brain does. Your eyes send the correct information exactly as it is. The problem is that your brain, in order to interpret things at lightning speed without freezing up, makes assumptions about light, shadows, and distance. And sometimes those assumptions fail badly. In the famous checkerboard shadow illusion, two squares that are the exact same shade of gray look clearly light in one spot and dark in another, because your brain corrects for a shadow it assumes is falling over the scene. The same thing happened with that dress some people saw as blue and black and others saw as white and gold. Each brain assumed a different lighting condition. Illusions aren't failures of your eyes. And the best part is that even once you know the answer, the illusion doesn't break. Your brain keeps insisting anyway. They're the traps set by the one interpreting things up top. They're smart because they inherited it. It runs in the family. Half true, and that half is dangerous if you swallow it whole. Twin studies show that genetics does have a big influence. Heredity likely explains around half of the differences in intelligence between people. But heredity isn't destiny, and it isn't a life sentence. The other half comes from environment, nutrition, education, stimulation, how much people read to you and talk to you as a kid. Adopted children who move from homes low in stimulation to homes rich in stimulation see their performance rise noticeably by several points. Genes deal the cards, but you're the one playing the hand with everything around you and everything you study. You weren't born with a fixed number nailed to your forehead. You were born with a range, and where you land within that range is decided by your life. You stare off into space, your mind wanders away, and someone tells you, stop wasting time, pay attention. False. When you daydream, your brain doesn't shut off or rest. It switches into a special mode called the default mode network, and important things happen in there. You plan out the future, you replay conversations, you connect loose ideas, and you even come up with the best solutions to problems that had you stuck. A ton of creative ideas are born right when you're in the shower, washing dishes, or staring out a bus window, not when you're forcing your head against a problem. That mental drifting also helps sort out and lock in what you've learned. Getting distracted for a while isn't laziness. It's your brain working in the background without you even giving the order. There's a reason so many famous inventions showed up while someone was walking, showering, or drifting off to sleep. Sometimes the best idea arrives right when you stop looking for it. We're the kings. We've got the biggest brain. Completely false. Your brain weighs about 3 pounds. An elephant's brain weighs around 11 pounds. A sperm whale's, the absolute champion, reaches around 15 to 18 pounds. They beat you by a mile and they don't even hold it against you. So why do we run the planet then? Because what matters isn't raw size, it's organization, the number of neurons in the cortex, and how densely everything is connected. Humans have an extremely high brain-to-body ratio and a heavily folded cortex, with wrinkles that multiply the surface area. We don't win on pounds of mass, we win on how it's wired and folded. Take the elephant, its brain has around 257 billion neurons, way more than yours. But 97% of them sit in the cerebellum, which handles the body. In the cortex, the part that actually thinks, the elephant has around 5 billion, and you have around 16 billion, 3 times as many. That's where the real difference lies. With the brain, like with a lot of things, it's not how much you have, it's how you use it. You picture memory as a tidy filing cabinet, each memory in its own labeled little drawer. And recalling something just means opening the drawer. False. A memory isn't stored in one single place like a folder on a shelf. It's scattered all across the brain in loose pieces. The image in one spot, the sound in another, the emotions somewhere else, the smells somewhere else again. When you remember something, your brain isn't opening a drawer. It's rebuilding the memory from scratch, gathering all those pieces on the fly. That's why sometimes you recover one part and not another, or you accidentally blend pieces from different memories together and end up swearing it really happened that way. The hippocampus works more like an index that tells you where the pieces are than like a safe that keeps them locked away. Remembering isn't reading an old file that's still intact, and if a piece is missing, your head just invents one to complete the picture. It's rebuilding a puzzle every single time, with the pieces scattered all over the place. That stress makes you sick, ruins you, and needs to be wiped out of your life completely. Incomplete. There's such a thing as good stress. Scientists call it eustress. Just the right dose before an exam, a game, or an interview wakes you up, sharpens your memory, and helps you perform better. This has been known for about a century as a certain law of activation. A little bit of arousal boosts performance, but too much, and performance collapses all at once. The nerves before you step out on stage aren't your enemy. They're your engine warming up before the race. What actually causes damage is chronic stress. The kind that never lets up for months and keeps you on high alert around the clock. That's the kind that truly wears down your brain and your body. A little pressure lights you up. The trick isn't to kill stress. It's to learn how to switch it off once it's done its job. The real problem is living permanently in the red zone, never coming back down. He's old now. It's normal for him to forget everything. His mind is going. False. And believing it can actually be dangerous. Normal aging means recalling things a little more slowly, taking a moment to find a word that's on the tip of your tongue, forgetting where you left your keys. That happens to everyone, even busy young people, but seriously losing your memory, forgetting family members' faces, getting lost in your own neighborhood, becoming disoriented. That's not part of healthy aging. That's an illness, like Alzheimer's, and it needs medical attention, not just a shrug and blaming old age. In fact, some things actually improve with the years, like vocabulary and accumulated knowledge. What's known as crystallized intelligence. An old brain isn't a broken brain. Confusing illness with age causes a lot of people to not seek help in time. Forgetting a name is human. Forgetting who you are is not just an old person thing. Eat something sweet before the exam, your brain needs sugar. Half true, and badly applied. It's true that the brain uses glucose as its main fuel, but your body regulates that on its own and pulls it from almost any food you eat. Not from some emergency piece of candy. The famous sugar rush that's supposedly going to light you up and help you concentrate is more myth than reality. A large review pulling together dozens of studies found that sugar doesn't improve mood or focus, and that a little while later, it can actually leave you more tired, sleepier, and less alert than before. The crash you feel when you're genuinely hungry is real, but it's fixed by eating a balanced meal, not by stuffing yourself with sweets. Your brain isn't a furnace that needs to be fed sugar every couple of hours. Eat well, and it runs on its own. No emergency lollipop required. In a lot of textbooks, you'll read that neurons are surrounded by other cells, glial cells at a ratio of 10:1, that you're mostly filler with just a little bit of actual thinking neuron. False. And it's an error that got copied for decades from one book to the next. In 2009, researcher Susanna Herculano counted the cells in the human brain using a new method that dissolved them and counted them one by one. And the real number turned out to be close to 1:1, roughly the same number of neurons as glial cells, around 86 billion of each type. The famous 10:1 ratio was old data repeated without anyone ever bothering to check it. A myth that lived comfortably in classrooms around the world simply because nobody had ever thought to actually sit down and count. Sometimes science doesn't get things wrong because of bad experiments. A tidy fact, repeated 1,000 times with no verification, turns into textbook truth. It gets things wrong by copying off someone else's homework. The classic move, cramming everything into the night before the exam. One giant marathon session fueled by gallons of coffee. False. It's called the spacing effect, and Ebbinghaus discovered it more than a century ago by testing himself. The exact same number of study hours pays off far more when you spread them out over several days than when you pile them all together in one go. When you study in spaced out sessions, you're forcing your brain to retrieve what it learned every time you come back to it. And that effort is what locks it in. When you cram everything the night before, you might scrape by the next day if you're lucky, and by the following week you barely remember any of it. Your brain consolidates memories while you sleep, which is why it needs several nights, not a single sleepless one. Cramming the night before might save your grade. The exact same grade ends up on paper, but one person forgets it within a week, while the other remembers it for years. Studying a little at a time is what actually saves the knowledge. Don't go anywhere, because myth number 33 is going to make you see your own mind in a whole new way, once you find out that maybe you're not even the one making your own decisions. Here's the one I promised you. The one that's going to make you look at your own mind differently. You believe that first you consciously decide, using your own free will, and then your brain carries out the order like an employee. Well, it might actually work the other way around. In a famous experiment from the 1980s, scientist Benjamin Libet measured the brain activity of people who were told to move their hand whenever they felt like it. At whatever moment they chose, he discovered something unsettling. The brain started preparing for the movement about half a second before the person felt they had decided to move it. Newer studies using MRI scans have managed to predict the choice up to several seconds before the subject was even aware they had chosen anything. There's a huge debate over what all this means for free will, but it leaves you with a dizzying thought. Sometimes your brain has already gotten started and your conscious self only finds out afterward. You believe your brain always tells you the plain truth about why you do what you do. False. Your brain is a charming liar that fills in the gaps without warning you and without you ever noticing. It's called confabulation. In experiments with patients whose two brain hemispheres had been disconnected by surgery, a secret instruction was given to one side of the brain. The person carried it out, and when asked why they had done it, the other side, which had no clue what had happened, instantly invented a logical explanation and believed it completely. There are studies on choice blindness where researchers swap the answer a person gave and the person still firmly defends it as their own. Your brain has an internal narrator that needs everything to make sense, so If the real reason is missing, it manufactures one instantly. You don't always know why you do the things you do, and it does this with tremendous confidence, as if it genuinely knew the answer. Sometimes your head improvises the motive on the spot, and you go ahead and believe it. Artists are born. Creativity is a gift from heaven. You either have it or you don't. False. Creativity isn't a magic bolt of lightning that strikes a lucky few chosen ones while everybody else gets nothing. It's a skill that gets trained and practiced, just like riding a bike or playing guitar. Studies show that divergent thinking, the ability to come up with many different solutions to the same problem, improves with practice and with concrete techniques you can actually learn. Behind every brilliant idea you admire, there's usually a mountain of failed attempts, discarded drafts, and work you never see in the final picture. Even ideas that seem to appear out of nowhere are the result of incubation, your brain chewing on the problem underneath the surface while you're busy doing something else. Creativity isn't a gift you won in some lottery. It's a mental muscle that gets built through trying and failing over and over. It's just not sinking in. I wasn't born for this. Better to just quit. False. And that sentence is sabotaging you right to your face. Struggling with something while studying isn't a sign that you're bad at it or not smart enough. A lot of the time, it's the exact sign that you're actually learning for real. Psychologists call this desirable difficulties, an odd name for something simple. When learning feels easy and effortless, your brain is usually running on autopilot, giving you the dangerous illusion that you already know it. When it's hard, when you have to push yourself and sweat to remember or understand something, that's exactly when the information locks in hard and for good. Effort isn't proof that you can't do it. It's the exact price you pay for it to actually stick. If nothing is difficult, chances are you're not learning anything at all. Mental sweat is the sign that it's actually sinking in. To decide well, you have to be cold as ice, leave emotion out of it, and use pure logic. False. And there's a famous case that proves it. Neurologist Antonio Damasio studied people with damage to the brain region that connects emotion with reason. These were intelligent people, with their logic and their IQ fully intact, but unable to make even the most trivial decision. They'd spend hours frozen, trying to pick between 2 restaurants or 2 dates, because without the emotional signal, they had nothing to tip the scale one way or the other. Emotion isn't the enemy of a good decision. It's part of the engine that makes deciding possible in the first place. Your gut feeling when you choose something is your emotional brain helping you cut through the noise instead of getting stuck. Stripping all emotion out of reasoning doesn't turn you into a perfect cold machine. It turns you into someone who can't even decide what to eat for lunch. At the pharmacy, there are entire shelves full of supplements for memory, with ginkgo biloba leading the pack and a price tag that'll make you flinch. False, or at least there's no serious proof behind it. One of the largest studies ever done, following more than 3,000 older adults over several years, compared people taking ginkgo against people taking a fake pill, a placebo. The result? It didn't prevent dementia, and it didn't improve memory one bit. Just like the sugar pill, most of these supplements are selling smoke wrapped in a pretty package and a big promise. What's actually been proven again and again to protect and improve your brain is boringly simple and completely free. Sleeping well, moving your body, eating a varied diet, and continuing to learn new things. The magic memory pill doesn't exist. Your best brain supplement is a pair of sneakers and a good night's sleep. You think a baby starts out with a nearly empty brain that gradually fills up with connections over the years, and that you, as a full-grown adult, have way more of them. It's actually the opposite. A 2 or 3-year-old has far more connections between neurons than you have right now. At that peak, each neuron can have around 15,000 connections, way more than an adult's. So what happens to all that wiring afterward? The brain does something that sounds really strange. It prunes. It eliminates the connections that don't get used and strengthens the ones that do, like a gardener, trimming away extra branches so the tree grows strong and straight. By the time you reach adulthood, you've lost about half of those childhood connections. You don't mature by endlessly adding more wires. You mature by cutting out the ones that are extra and getting in the way. That's why the first few years are so crucial. That's when it gets decided which branches stay. Fewer connections, but far better wired. And to close things out, the biggest one of all, the one that sums up the whole show. You believe you perceive reality exactly as it is. That the world is exactly what you see, hear, and touch, with no filter at all. False? And it's the root of almost every myth we've covered so far. Your brain doesn't receive the world in its raw form. It builds it from scratch. Using the incomplete, delayed data it gets through your senses, it puts together its best guess at what reality out there actually looks like. And that internal guess is the only thing you ever really experience. Color doesn't live in objects. Your brain paints it on. Sound is just air moving around that your head converts into music or noise. Some scientists, like Anil Seth, straight up call it a controlled hallucination. You don't see reality. You see the version your brain decided to show you so you'd survive better. The real world, the raw one, you've never actually touched. All you know is the movie, the one on the inside, keeps projecting for you. And that's how we tore down all 40 myths about your own head. If at least one of these blew your mind, drop a like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments which one was the hardest for you to let go of. See you in the next one.